What is going on, everyone? My name is Boit, and you know what? I was a little bit hesitant today to make this video because I've covered this topic before, but the Age of Mythology clock has ticked over once again, and there's actually something new to talk about now. AutoQ 2.0. Retold stirred up both the Age of Titans and RTS communities alike by introducing Villager AutoQ as the default option in lobbies and ranked games. There was an option to enable military AutoQ as well, though I didn't use it through the beta, and I'm not sure many people were even quite sure what it was or how to use it. Retold also shadow introduced a feature dubbed Pre-Queue, but in reality, this feature is just AutoQ for technologies. More on that later. Despite the overwhelming demand for AutoQ, the legacy community's reaction was surprisingly positive. Suffice it to say, I think RTS games have been yearning for some quality of life features, or better put, ease of entry features for players of all skill levels to be able to enjoy. It is without a doubt the case that RTS is a high barrier to entry genre, with a group of elite players who have been playing RTS games for years and years, coming down from their castles in the lands of 300 plus APM, telling developers what is okay and not okay to include. Should workers auto work? Should we have auto scout? Should we have auto farm? What is tedious? What is not? These questions all come down to one thing. Games are supposed to be fun. Now, fun is subjective, and I'll never understand how the legend Zezima from RuneScape Classic got max skills, but I'm sure he enjoyed the process. At any rate, before Retold, there was really only two options: AutoQ or no AutoQ. After Retold, now there's three options, adding in civilian unit AutoQ only. Recently, I stumbled across another option that I'd like to call the Beastie. AutoQ on villagers, but a train time reduction, so that players who do it manually will have an advantage. I'm interested in what your guys' opinions are on all of this. I know this is a divisive topic, and I'm sure there will be players who won't play Retold very much if a certain decision is made. So I want to try and put out exactly what I think it means for Age of Mythology if a certain path is chosen. So let's just start with AutoQ on everything. Top players shudder, casuals rejoice, a new era of RTS game is born, or dies a very swift death. I know for certain there is a breed of professional gamer who won't even give the game a chance if AutoQ goes onto everything. Some will remain, but one thing's for certain: a large fan base of these types of players will hear everything their idol has to say and leave swiftly and decisively. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think that there is a sizable minority who genuinely do want AutoQ on everything. However, I'm not sure this group of people would be the type to dive into ranked very often at all, and I will be very happy to play custom games with AutoQ enabled, which was a feature in the beta. Feel free to voice how right or wrong I am on this, and let me know if you noticed if this feature in the lobbies was even there or not. In terms of sheer gameplay, we know what AutoQ on everything looks like. I've played and watched thousands of Age of Titans games. For me, it's fun, it's challenging, it forces a player to focus on their decision making in micro above all else. But it's abusive. It has a ceiling. For some, it takes all the control away, making the game feel boring. And most of all, a dry defensive playstyle, which should be quite hard to execute normally, becomes not only very strong, but very easy to utilize. Not only that, imbalances that might be locked to the top level of gameplay end up popping up at all levels and ruining a lot of gaming experiences, more so than they otherwise probably should. All that being said, aggressive, fun gameplay is also possible and very common at the top level. I myself basically only play aggressive or timing attack strategies to even tournament success. So while defensive playstyle is easy and strong, it doesn't mean that that's all you can do. Another small addition to this is your actual usable resources end up being slightly more with autoqueue due to only needing to spend them at the very moment they are needed, which does speed things up considerably. Moving on, no autoqueue is hardcore. It is rewarding, but games become slower. Players get more and more scared to make swift decisions with their army because they know they have to work hard to rebuild it. Strategy, while 100% existing, is to a degree locked to the top 10% of the player base who have their mechanics down to a level that it actually starts mattering. I remember playing Age of Empires 2 for the first time not so long ago, maybe during COVID. And I honestly had zero idea what I was doing, but as a player who has played RTS games for over a decade now, my mechanics are pretty good, and I managed to get to a respectable rating very quickly by simply outproducing my opponents. I didn't know what unit beat what, or what resource was important, or any timings. I just built stuff and attacked, and found I won. Watching top level players play, you see something very similar to an autoqueue on everything game because they are so insanely good, but there's still a lot of empty time where a player using autoqueue would probably be able to do something useful, and due to needing to spend resources a little bit earlier than necessary by queuing up multiple villages or units in a building, even the best players are getting slowed down by this. Autoqueue on villages is a really interesting compromise between the two, and the design decision that the Retold developers decided to go for. It gives players effectively auto income, but requires them to still have the mechanical skill that competitive players have honed over the years to have any serious success. To put into context how important villager creation is, if I miss just one villager for 1 second, that puts every villager I create after it back 1 second for the rest of the game. For ease of understanding's sake, if this were to happen at the start of the game, I'll be behind 100 total seconds of villager gather time over the course of a game, putting me behind around 100 resources. Even top players in Age of Empires 2, the most competitive of the Age of Empires series, miss villagers from time to time. So this is a huge leveler of skill. That being said, gaining the resources and spending the resources are two separate things. And in my opinion, this really does a lot to keep both parties happy. I do think that newer players will struggle with their gigantic economy, as without autoqueue on villages, they might only get to around 10 to 20 villages total in a game, but they can also choose to not use this feature and enjoy their skirmish games versus the AI, so this is a bit of a non-issue in my opinion. While I still think from a purely viewer standpoint, full autoqueue creates the most action-packed games, and legacy players were struggling without military autoqueue in the beta, to be completely frank. I don't think it will take long for them to get used to it, but those crazy games will definitely come back on the menu over time. One thing to also consider for those who have not yet got their hands on Retold, the user experience with regards to building units has been modernized. While it's possible to play legacy AoM without autoqueue, it is incredibly tedious and takes a lot of time and understanding to get good at this system. In vanilla, you often see people just going one unit for the entire game, as that's just the easiest way for them to spend their resources. Some top players, notably Beastie, have recognized that the steep learning curve in RTS games deters new players who might opt for more simpler games like League of Legends or Fortnite, and as such offered up the option of an autoqueue which delays the production of a unit by a few seconds. As stated above, this would obviously be terrible to use in a competitive setting, as even 1 second of idle time in the town center ends up being quite a big resource loss over the course of the game. I was having a discussion with my good buddy Chrono JJ about this, and I wanted to share something he said. Penalizing players for using a game feature feels awkward and counterproductive. as it implies that the feature shouldn't belong in competitive play to begin with. Now, on the flip side, if this were to be applied to military only, things get a bit different. A couple of seconds of delay on a unit being produced does not tend to matter for most situations, and it would free up a player to micro, side build, wall, and multi-raid. But practically speaking, what it would do is make aggressive play much weaker as your timings are pushed back, and the easy to execute boomy defensive play would simply just be king. Suffice it to say, I'm not a fan of this in any way, shape or form, though I am willing to listen to some more arguments about this because it's a relatively new concept that hasn't been tried yet. In the end, auto queue or not auto queue, top players will still be top players. A low level player will not magically beat Hera in Age of Empires 2 if they have auto queue, though there are arguments about a fairly strong player being able to close that gap if they got auto queue. I do understand where professional players are coming from though. If you told a basketball player that traveling was no longer a violation and dribbling was optional, they would likely be outraged, just as an RTS player might be with the introduction of auto queue. But I do think there needs to be something done for RTS to push it forward into a time where new gamers are a little less hardcore and don't want to spend hundreds of hours grinding mechanics that aren't flashy or glamorous just so they can compete at a decent level in a game. I totally understand a gamer grinding 100 hours to hit a flip reset in Rocket League because it looks sick, but in RTS, you kind of just get more stuff, which while has an obvious benefit, is a little bit less sellable. Now, given that we could potentially have an option in custom games, which allows for all 4 of these options to be allowed, the question isn't which should it be, the question is what should the default setting be, and what should ranked be? If you were only going to play custom games, then you can play how you like to play it, and I'm all for that and encourage that, but when it comes to how this game will be played in tournament and competitively in general, I think this discussion is important. I'll be putting a community poll out, so be on the lookout for it and definitely vote and leave comments. One last thing I wanted to touch on was pre-queue. If you're against auto queue, I think you really should be against this as well. The pre-queue feature in Age of Mythology Retold offers convenience by automating technology upgrades once resources are available, but I think it will reduce the game's challenge in depth. By lowering the tension in decision making, it diminishes the strategic balance between immediate and long-term resource management. Not only this, it rewards players for poor macro in that if they miss training cycles on their military, they'll get a really nice tech instead, which while may not be the best decision, is better than no decision. Obviously, it is a feature you can choose not to use, but I think it's going to be way too helpful to not use it. And if it remains in the game, I will simply work out the best way to get maximum rewards with minimum downside. And I think that this does end in a less fun game, but fun or whatever, that is personal opinion. No matter what happens, I'm incredibly excited about Retold. I think it's an incredibly fun game and I can't wait to play it in whatever shape, form, size it comes in. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a comment, look out for the poll, and I'll see you guys in the next one.